Good morning. We are Group 9, which is composed by Cristina Molina, Ángela Jordán, Martín Molina, and me, Ana Soler. Our project is focused on reducing the weight of an airplane by changing the fuselage's materials. An Airbus A380MT weighs 276,000 kilograms. The more a plane weighs, the more fuel it needs to fly, and the more economic cost it entails. Moreover, less fuel means less carbon dioxide emissions, which makes it more eco-friendly, an objective that the aerospace industry has been looking for years. Following this direction, we will carry out an investigation of the actual materials of the fuselage of a plane and how they can be improved in order to be lighter. Nowadays, most used fuselage structures are from type monocoque and semi-monocoque, as they let integrate in a single body, structure, and covering, in addition to pressurizing the interior in order to fly higher. The most extended one is the semi-monocoque fuselage, given that, although it is less resistant, it weighs less. But why do engineers use the semi-monocoque structure if it is less resistant? Because this type of structure lets the aircraft reduce buckling. We can see in the first picture what are the components of the semi-monocoque fuselage. Now that we know how the structure of an aircraft is, let us focus on what we can change in order to reduce the weight of the fuselage: materials. As we can see in the second picture, carbon fiber, glass fiber, and quartz fiber reinforced plastics are used in some sections of the fuselage and in the empennage.
So if the key concept in aircraft design and manufacturing is weight reduction, we must look for an appropriate material that achieves this, taking into account all the considerations that make a material a good for this purpose. We will comment some of them. Firstly, whichever material is used, the airplane structure must be capable of withstanding a wide variety of structural loads throughout its useful life. Because of this, stress, strain, elastic deformation, and plastic deformation become of high importance in order to know the limits that the material must not exceed under any circumstances. Since this project looks for reduction in the weight of the fuselage, the material density is probably the prime consideration together with the young modulus, in order to find the structural efficiency of the aircraft. Moreover, a specific buckling resistance is something to have always in mind. On the other hand, the fracture toughness has an important role for the selection, especially with where fatigue crack growth is, something that Angela will explain later. High resistance to fracture is essential to ensure high damage tolerance for the materials used in aircraft structures and engines. It is obvious that an important way to increase the damage tolerance is raising fracture toughness. But how can we do this? Well, fracture toughness divides in the critical stress intensity factor and the critical strain energy release. The higher these two are, the higher the fracture resistance is, and therefore the damage tolerance.
In addition, there are many thermal properties that material needs to accomplish. These properties are thermal conductivity, it is the ability to conduct heat, and taking into account that airplanes going to be in very extreme temperature, the material must have a low thermal conductivity, so the temperature inside the airplane is not affected by the outside temperature. Another property is specific heat capacity. As the plane must be isolated, the material must be a higher specific heat. On the other hand, thermal diffusivity must be also too low, since both properties are proportionally related if we observe the formula. However, thermal diffusivity is inversely proportional to specific heat capacity. So the first one must be as higher as possible, making thermal diffusivity lower. The other property is thermal effusivity that measures the material's ability to exchange thermal energy with its surroundings. Well, to conclude with thermal properties, the coefficient of thermal expansion, which describes how the size of an object changes with a change in temperature, must be always considered. Apart from the properties mentioned before, there are still many important properties. For resistance to fatigue is another important attribute for airplane materials. Fatigue occurs when a material suggests to alternating stresses over a long period of time. We see the first observation of damage crack initiation of a detectable length at a certain number of cycles. In order to avoid possible tragedies if the material isn't in good condition, the material used must have a very good resistance to fatigue, and many techniques be used to detect possible scratch on the fuselage.
Now we are going to talk about the material design. There were different types of material which could be suitable for our project, so we started studying all the possibilities, having in consideration the properties mentioned before. First, we started studying several alloys. Mainly we focused in the magnesium one because it had a low density and a similar specific stiffness in comparison to the aluminum alloy that is actually used for parts of the landing gear of helicopters. But the main problem is that aluminum has a high low density, so we should add more quantity of magnesium in order to reduce it. Then, in our research, we focused in the titanium alloy. Titanium could be one of the best options for our project because it has magnificent mechanical properties, such as a high fracture toughness value, oxidation and corrosion resistance, etc. However, titanium has a big inconvenience, its price. This means that saving weight won't suppose a real economic advantage, because all the money we should save from each flight were going to be destined to the titanium manufacturer. Then, we did our research with the CES EduPack application in order to find a material that meets the specifications we demand. This material is called Victrex PEEK or ZETEX, and it is a composition of PEEK and a carbon fiber reinforcement. Furthermore, we wanted to compare it with a material that is in development process, which is called Scalmalloy. Both materials haven't been applied to the aerospace industry. However, Scalmalloy is actually used for the automotive sector in the design of heat exchangers. Referring to the properties, we can see in this table that Scalmalloy is able to have values similar to the titanium ones, but with a lower density, almost the same as other alloys such as aluminum. On the other hand, Victrex has a density even lower than the Scalmalloy one. However, its Young modulus is lower. We can conclude saying that both materials have many similarities and could be fine in order to be applied, because they accomplish all their requirements, but studying the coefficient of buckling, we can see that Victrex has a higher one with respect to the Scalmalloy. So, in order to decide one, we would take the Victrex because it's the most appropriate, although there is not a huge difference.
Okay, just to conclude, during the development of this project, an attempt was made to analyze the most relevant consideration that any material used in the manufacture of an aircraft fuselage should have. These are materials that must be prepared to withstand extreme conditions, and the aviation industry is highly demanding. After doing the corresponding investigation, we can affirm that Victrex is the best material in order to be used in the aircraft fuselage, as it has low density, a great buckling coefficient, and it has competitive price regarding its specifications. So, commercial aircraft weight reduction is an ambitious project within a field in which numerous studies have been conducted for years. We strongly believe that we did our best to get a good alternative. So, thank you very much for your attention.